Hello all, it's me again. In this little subsection of employee-centric culture, I just really want to talk about how to hear your employees and how to actively hear them, listen to what they're saying and action it as well. And we'll talk about that. So as we go through it, I just want you to have a little think about your business and what you do to capture employee voice and capture feedback and ways in which you action it, and then also ways you can improve. So the objective for the end of this little mini session is that by the end you'll be able to recognise the importance of employee voice in the workplace, as well as interpret and analyse to what degree employee voice is heard, actioned and welcome within your business. So let's begin. So as you can see on the slides here, there's quite a few people not being very nice about listening to other people talk. We wouldn't want any of our employees, any of our managers, any of our staff to ever communicate like that with each other, because to be honest, it's just quite degrading, and it definitely decreases the value someone would feel and the happiness they would feel in the workplace if they weren't respected and their opinions weren't respected and they weren't listened to. The power of listening to people's voice is super important. So just have a quick think about, can your employees come to you with their honest opinion? If they did, would it be considered and would it be valued? How comfortable do you think they feel in doing this? And do you have the time and resources set aside to regularly listen to them? So do you actively seek, listen and action feedback from your employees? And let's have a look at what that means as well. So the CIPD, which is the Professional Association for and Body for HR, defines that there are two different types of employee voice within the workplace. There's organisational voice, which you can see on the screen, which focuses on the positive impact a person's voice can have with regards to advancing the organisation. So this is feedback collected from the employees, which directly advances the organisation, which might be in terms of lots of different things, new initiatives, new products, things like that. There's also employee voice, which focuses on an individual's right to be heard, express autonomy and be involved in decisions, and decisions in general, but decisions that also directly affect them. And also an individual's right to raise concerns, such as through whistleblowing procedures, which is why it's really important you have those in place within your business. So there was a survey, 2017 survey done by Salesforce, which the reference for this can be found on the reference document links that I set up on the website. And Salesforce found that employees who feel their voice is heard in the workplace are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to do their best work, and in turn be more productive and earn you money. So just have a think about, even if you think, yes, our employees are so well heard, we action what they say, is there a way you can up the ante? Is there a way that you can drive their voice even more and feel it even more? Because it can only benefit your business in a positive direction. As we talk about hearing employees, I also just really want to talk about ways in which this can be done, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But think about, do you do it on quite a grand scale or is it quite a personal scale? Because both work quite well. A lot of companies send out annual surveys once a year, which they collect employees' feedback, which, yes, that's great. You might get quite a wide pool there of information from lots of different people. But just capturing a once-in-a-blue moon perspective of your business isn't actually necessarily that beneficial. Super important to also get individuals' business ideas and individual opinions on a very one-to-one basis. So please encourage your managers to do this. Now let's have a look at ways in which you can collect feedback and you can hear your employee's voice. So the graph that is displayed there is from a CIPD 2018 survey in which they asked 2,372 people about how their voice was heard in the workplace. In general, they found that smaller and private sector firms generally had happier staff, and they were a lot happier with how their voice was collected and heard, compared to larger and public sector workers, which were generally a lot more unhappy. So as you can see from on the screen, there's lots of different ways that you can capture employee voice. One of the more common ways is one-to-one meetings with line managers. This is brilliant. I really, really encourage you to have those conversations with your staff. However, some things to consider with that is that sometimes it might be good to bring in someone removed from the employees. Not all the time, because that isn't very good for building relationships, but occasionally that might be something that's quite good to do, just to see if you get any sort of different feedback from them. It might be someone that's removed from them but also works for your company, or it could be someone just external that you bring in. That can be really powerful, as there might be some things that staff don't want to say to their line manager because maybe it's about their line manager, or for example, I'm a pub manager, so it might be some things that staff don't want to say to me because they don't want to offend me because it's essentially my pub in inverted commas. But if my area manager came in, they might say it to them because that person is removed, and then that person also can then come. It's their job to direct me. It's my area manager's job to do that. So they are more equipped to do that than maybe they feel they are. So take note of power imbalances. We want to push through those and not have them, but to some degree, especially if you have different managerial scales, to some degree there will be that, and people will feel and experience that. So it's really important to also look at how often do you get someone removed from an employee to ask them how they are, ask them how they feel in the workplace. That's just something I want you to think about. Lots of other ways that you can collect employee feedback, such as the surveys, as we mentioned, is this quite generally quite grand event, which is the third most common. Team meetings, there's other little bits as well, trade unions, and all that sort of stuff. With this, I definitely want you to focus on your current employees and collecting their voice, but also never underestimate the power of exit interviews and capturing the voice of people who are leaving you, because they're leaving you for a reason. And if you want to reduce your turnover, you need to look at those people, not just those people, because you need to look at the people you've currently got, but those people that are leaving, and you need to know why. If you can see why people are leaving, especially if this is a common theme, you know that there's areas that your business needs to work on, because there's always something to improve. Other ideas on ways that you can collect feedback can be through avenues such as giving employees a seat at the table, as it was. So create employee reps, or just have random employees regularly go to meetings with senior management team, and they can feedback their ideas from sort of the ground up. Suggestion boxes are also great. You could have them online or actually in the office, physical ones. They create I can't say that word, but you can be anonymous and post what you say. Some companies are also utilising advancement in tech to collect feedback and creating online platforms where people can network and vote in different polls and feedback online. This is also really great, although there has been some criticism that certain managers and certain companies are sort of filtering what's on there. So obviously if it's against sort of policy in terms of like EDI or anything like that, you definitely need to get rid of the comments. But just make sure that if you do set up something like that, you do have it there for free speech and allow it to be that and allow it to reflect what needs to be reflected. In my company, for example, we do a tell Tim. Tim Martin's the man who set up Weatherspoons, which is where I work. And you can send in sort of anonymous ideas and feedback, and you get £5 for every suggestion you send. And then that is then taken to a meeting which is full of different heads of department, different senior leadership, and different a selection of people that work for the company. It's random every week. There'll be associates to pub managers and all that sort of stuff, and they will go along and they will give their feedback on the different topics and different ideas. And that's a really good way to sort of bring everyone together to have a conversation from everyone's perspective of will it work, won't it work, blah blah blah, and get some changes in. In my company, we also do have, as I said, I work in a pub, so it's very customer led. So this wouldn't work for everyone, but we do also have a bit like the secret boss that used to be on TV. We do have members of the senior leadership team who would do back to work shifts, and they will come into a pub and they will do a 4 or 5 hour shift, maybe making drinks, running food, and in that they get to talk to the employees and have a bit more of an honest conversation, see it from their point of view, what works, what doesn't. And that is something I really think is a great thing that we do as a company. So is that something you can incorporate for you and your people? With all this, it's really important that you don't just collect feedback from your employees when they're happy or just when they're sad and they're angry. It's important to do it across a range of emotions and a range of spectrums, which is why doing it once a year can actually be quite counterproductive. You need to have it as an ongoing sort of policy and procedure. Chris White, which is a gentleman in the sort of frame with the microphone on, if you click on that, that should take you to a link, and I've also linked it on the website, which is a TED talk about him, and he talks about various different issues to do with employee voice, and it's really, really interesting. Definitely give it a listen. And in his TED talk, he talks about how it's pretty common sense. If staff feel more comfortable talking to you and coming forward with an issue, this is because they feel more heard, and in the long run can save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of resources, because issues can very quickly snowball if people aren't listened to. Crucially, with employee voice, you need to do more than just hear. You need to act. Your employees are your most powerful resource if you haven't worked that out already. You need to action what they say, otherwise they'll act on their own. They'll either maybe do a protest and walk out, or they'll walk out and go and work for someone else and make their money, which isn't what you want. An example of where listening and actioning employees showed its worth can be seen when Arrow Communications, which is on the penultimate slide, on the penultimate section when I talk about case studies, and also on the links that I've set up in the case study section. Arrow Communications worked on improving their employee engagement, so you can get more information on this here. But when they worked on their employee engagement, they actioned 81% of 295 ideas that were generated by staff. This in turn saw them have a 76% reduction of turnover in 2 years. That is massive. That is such an incredible reduction of turnover for just listening and doing what your employees want. If you go back and listen to the video from Chris White, he talks about how 20,000 people from Google staged a walkout protest over sexism in the workplace in one day. Imagine having a company that big in the first place, but then imagine having 20,000 of them walk out in one day. That definitely obviously had a knock-on effect on their productivity, and could have been easily rectified if their frustrations, which had been told to senior leadership, had been actioned sooner. A co-chair from the UK Employment Engagement Task Force said, "Employee voice is the cheapest smoke alarm you'll ever buy," and I think it's so important and such a good way to put it. Your business can go so south if you don't listen to what people on the ground are telling you. It's really important though, if you can't for whatever reason action what your employees have said, you need to explain to them why. Take the time to explain why. See if there's a way that you can come to a compromise. Maybe it's a money issue, a way you can compromise on it. But acknowledge their contribution. Explain why at the moment you can't do it. Even that in itself is empowering, because it shows you haven't just listened and dismissed it, you've actually thought about it and taken into consideration. Whatever you do though, don't just dismiss the idea outright. Take their idea, discuss it with others. You never know. Maybe someone suggests that managers should have a more comprehensive mental health training. You're like, yeah, we don't have money for that. But don't say that. Go and ask. It turns out, yes, you do have the money for that. And there was a bit of debate about it already, or people higher up than you think it's a brilliant idea and it gets rolled out. You never know. You never know what can be achieved. And if you don't ask, you don't get. Lastly, I just really want to quickly quote Ted White's TED Talk again. Why not ask your employees a really powerful question? I love this, and he ends on this. It's brilliant. Please go and watch the TED Talk if you do nothing else today. He says, why don't you ask your employees the question, what don't we talk about round here that we probably should? So go away, have a think about it, and ask yourself and ask your employees, what should we talk about that we don't? Thanks, guys.